Hello and welcome along to Matchday 30 Championship predictions from the Honest Football Podcast. After 2 weeks of dribs and drabs, we've finally got a full fixture list again, and we will be talking through the 12 games, giving our score predictions, and of course reflecting on the club's January transfer windows, which may well have a big bearing on these fixtures. But before we go and do all of that, we've got to have a quick recap of the last two mini match days. So back to last weekend first, where there were 3 fixtures, all ended in home wins with clean sheets. I predicted 2 of them with the correct outcome. Just 2 points for me, no perfect scores, and the same for the rest of the comments as well. Tony got 2 points alongside me, but nothing better this weekend. It was a very tough one to predict in the end. And then on to midweek, Luton v Cardiff on Tuesday night. A 1-0 win correctly predicted by Robert, well done to you. Steve also correctly predicted a Luton win. I only went for a 1-1 draw, so no points for me. I do not get anything for that midweek, but it's one I'm happy to lose on. I'm sure you'll accept that. Let's move on though to Matchday 30. It is a big weekend in the Championship, all 24 sides in action. And we start on Friday night with Sky's favourite Friday night team. It's West Bromwich Albion, who are at home to Coventry City. Now, West Brom have had a couple of difficult fixtures, a very bad day in the FA Cup after a defeat to league leaders Burnley from a late free kick 2 weeks ago. And Coventry, on the other hand, of course, were one of the few sides in action last weekend. A second half double from Gustavo Hamer and Casey Palmer got them a comfortable win against Huddersfield. You would have expected that on paper, but their home form coming back now. Wasn't a great game, didn't have a lot of the ball, but took their clear chances and made sure of the 3 points. Coventry at home, traditionally a good side. On the road, it's a very different story. Only 3 wins all season away from home, the 5th worst record in the Championship. And they've had a quite quiet window, but maybe their best bit of business was keeping hold of Gyökeres, where there's been a lot of links about him at the end of the window. The same probably goes for West Brom, who, in what would have been one of the most bizarre moves of the day, almost let Karlan Grant go to Swansea, which I found baffling. But in the end, he stays. Experienced additions coming into the club as well, giving them a little bit more bite in midfield. And I think at home, with West Brom flying under Corberant bar that Burnley match, I think I've got to go for a West Brom win. Coventry on the road, they have shown at times they can be resilient, they can get themselves points. I'm going to go for West Brom to nick it. I think it'll be close. I'm going to go 2-1 to the Baggies. As we move on to the 2 early kickoffs on Saturday, and the first of them should be an absolute cracker. You've got Norwich City flying under new manager David Wagner. 4 goals a game against Coventry and Preston in their last 2 weeks. Burnley, on the other hand, had an FA Cup tie last Saturday, a 0-0 draw hard fought away at Ipswich Town. But prior to that, they were continuing their brilliant league form. Win after win after win. All by the odd goal the last 4 though. And that late free kick against West Brom, which we mentioned a minute ago, really crucial for them in their promotion push. They're continuing to improve the squad. They've added depth. They've taken advantage while they're doing well. And they've also managed to shift some of those bigger earners from the Premier League again. So the rotation of the squad, the evolution continues. For Norwich City, it's all about Marquinhos. What a signing he is from Arsenal. A real opportunity to add some quality to the side. Some real flair, some real creativity. And that's what we know from a David Wagner side. When they get going, they can be really aggressive and really exciting on the front foot. I actually think if Burnley are going to start a bad run or lose a game, this is one of those chances. Norwich City, Carrow Road will be bouncing with the quality of football they've played the last couple of games. They've done that away from home. Can they do it at their own ground? Carrow Road, they need to make it a fortress between now and the end of the year. If they win this one, they're probably back in the playoffs at the end of the weekend. I'm going to go for a high-scoring game. I'm going to go for a high-quality game. I'm going Norwich City 2, Burnley 2. On to the other early kickoff on Saturday. It's a Yorkshire derby between Rotherham and Sheffield United. Sheffield United, of course, were involved in that classic FA Cup tie last week on TV against Wrexham. Rotherham, last time out 2 weeks ago in the league, a 1-1 draw with Watford. That after the 4-0 thumping of Blackburn. Both teams actually in decent form recently, although Sheffield United just not losing games. For Rotherham, they've really added well to the squad in January. We mentioned the last couple of weeks about Sean Morrison. Jordan Hugill gives them a bit of firepower. And then some real good young lone stars as well. So Connor Coventry from West Ham, Bailey Wright from Sunderland, a clever addition. And Domingos Quina maybe will add that little bit of flair. I've always been a fan of his. For Sheffield United, they haven't done much because they haven't needed to. They're the best team away from home in the division. And Rotherham, while they are significantly better at home, this is a really tough test. Of course, Rotherham did win the game in the reverse fixture, a 1-0 shock at Bramall Lane. But in this one, I think it's going to be trickier. I'm torn between 1-1 and a Sheffield United win, but they have been scoring goals recently, the Blades. So I'm going to go for Sheffield United to nick it. I could easily see Rotherham getting a point, but I'm going to go for Sheffield United to go a goal up and then maybe nick a late one on the counter. The Charlie Bet special, 3-1 Sheffield United, but Rotherham really impressed with their January work. Let's get on to the 3 o'clock kickoffs with two sides that are in pretty awful form at the moment, if we're being honest. We've got QPR visiting Huddersfield Town. Huddersfield, of course, lost 2-0 to Coventry last weekend. QPR in the same week lost 3-0 at Hull City. Neil Critchley, bar that first day in the office, he has not had a good few weeks, has he? They haven't done a great deal in January. They're not really improving at the moment. And I go back to what I said last time. Are they any better off for when Mark Warburton left? Mick Beale had started the decline. They hadn't won for a few games before he went. It looks like QPR are just drifting away. Only 2 shots on target against Hull. An own goal for Rob Dickey. It wasn't the best performance. And in the end, Hull comfortably won that match. For Huddersfield, the struggle continues. They just looked like they were turning up over the festive period, didn't they? But since then, 4 without a win in all competitions. Against Coventry, it was an average game, but they never really looked like scoring a great deal. And that's a big problem when you're letting in goals at the other end. That's 8 conceded in their last 4 matches now. And although Huddersfield have improved in January, they've added some real experience towards the end of the window. I was a bit surprised that they let Sorba Thomas go, but didn't seem to be fancied by Fotheringham. But in come the likes of Matt Loughton, Anthony Knockhart, and Martin Waghorn, real experience into that squad. I just wonder whether that'll be enough because they're still only 3 points away. Cardiff don't look like scoring. Sides like Birmingham and Rotherham have been sliding since the World Cup. I do wonder if they can get out of it. If they're going to, this game is absolutely crucial. However, QPR have been drawing a lot of games recently. I know the whole day was an off game, but they've drawn 3 in a row before that. Huddersfield have lost 3 of their last 4 in all competitions, 2 out of 3 in the league. But they were against Coventry and Luton, who are both playoff contenders. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to sit on the fence. I could easily see either side winning this. You could easily see either defence collapsing if they're letting a goal. But I'm going to sit with the Championship's favourite scoreline. Seems like the right game for it. 1 apiece is my prediction. I was about to say on to another big game at the bottom now, but I'm not sure Hull City will see it that way. They're 11 points clear of safety, 6 points off the playoffs, and they're hosting Cardiff City this weekend. It was a 1-0 defeat for Cardiff at Luton Town on Tuesday night. I did see the game live, of course. Luton Town should have probably wrapped it up with a penalty a bit earlier on. It was largely one-way traffic for the match, but Cardiff were resolute defensively, which for the most part they have been this season. Going forward, they showed very little ambition. One great opportunity as the Luton defence parted. Ryan Wintle fluffed his lines, and one good save from Ethan Horvath. That was for the first 88 minutes. They didn't really look like conceding for the most part, but in the end, a towering header was enough to see them out. And we mentioned the same thing as we did in the manager special last week and in the previous predictions. The goal threat is just not there. In the last couple of minutes, though, after they conceded, they went a bit more aggressive, they went more direct, and they managed to create chances. They got the ball into dangerous areas, and it looked like they were a bit more threatening. So I'm a bit worried for Cardiff that they didn't seem to show ambition. Is a 0-0 away at a side that had only won 3 league games out of 13 at home? Was that really the way to set up? I'm not so sure. Would a point in that situation have been a great result there? Again, I'm not so sure. Maybe I'm talking down my club, but Cardiff City, I feel are better when they're on the front foot. Some of the antics, some of the time wasting was scandalous, but in the end, it came back to bite them. But my main takeaway from that game is the last 2 minutes, when they were being a bit more aggressive, when they were being more front-footed, they looked a far better side than the other 88 minutes. And if they play like that the whole 90, I'm pretty sure they would have scored a goal against Luton's makeshift defence at times. Hull City, on the other hand, brilliant against QPR. Liam Rossini, I've mentioned it for a while now. I am so impressed with the job he's doing. It's 2 big wins against sides in the bottom half of the league. QPR and Wigan put to the sword convincingly. Also won away at Birmingham over the festive period. Got that late draw against Huddersfield. It's only the Sheffield United game they haven't won, and they were in that game as well, to be fair. So massively impressed with what they've done. They've added some quality. Aaron Connolly getting 2 goals. Liam Rossini seems to be a very big fan of his. Carl Darlow comes in to add goalkeeping depth as well. I mean, they're going to be absolutely fine, which for a large part of the start of the season didn't necessarily look the case. Cardiff, I'm certainly not saying the same yet, but I don't really want to judge them till they've had a home game. My worry would be, though, if they set up the same way in this one, against a whole side that are beatable, that do concede goals at times, I'd be a little bit concerned. You've got to show the ambition. There were no real additions in the transfer window as well, so it's going to be a very tough end to the season for Sabri Lamouchi. His coaching skills are going to be tested. For this one, I'm going for a Hull City win. I don't think it'll be convincing because Cardiff won't come out. I'm going to go same again. 1-0, Hull City. Well, let's move on to the side that Cardiff lost to on Tuesday night. It is Luton Town versus Stoke City. Of course, I will be in attendance again. A bit of a strange end to the transfer window for Luton while that game was going on. Long-term servant Harry Cornick moves on. Of course, Cameron Jerome has already left the club, and James Bree, who played in a League Cup semi-final in midweek. But a few players coming in. Again, Luton largely recruiting either via loans or from the lower leagues. So it'll be interesting to see how Joe Taylor gets on. He will get game time up front, because we didn't really have a sub-striker on the bench yesterday. A marvellous Nakamba from Villa, very clever addition. Stoke, of course, the big switch is Harry Souttar going for 15 million. He's moved to the Premier League with Axel Twanzebe coming back in to replace that defensive void. And Stoke City have been alright recently. A 3-1 win against Stevenage after a big win against Reading in the league. I predicted a Stoke win that day, but to be so convincing after dropping into relegation trouble, very much a surprise after their recent performances. Luton have been okay recently, but it's largely been cup games, so very hard to judge. And the same issue goes for Luton as has gone all season, and it was almost the case against Cardiff again. Breaking down a side that's set up defensively on the road is very tricky. Now, Stoke didn't really do that at Sheffield United. They offered spaces at the back, and Luton would take advantage of that if it comes about this Saturday. But Stoke have a decent record at Kenilworth Road. Luton, I'm thinking, will struggle to break them down. I can easily see this petering out into a draw. It's just whether it's 1-1 or 2-2. But because we need the Championship's favourite scoreline to deliver, I'm going for Luton Town 1, Stoke City 1. Both sides, though, will be very happy with their last week. Next up is Middlesbrough versus Blackpool, which on paper looks like it might be a home banker, but Middlesbrough, one of the form teams in the division, bounced back from that Sunderland defeat and red card with a big win at home to Watford. Yes, the goals probably came a little easier than they expected, just parting the Watford defence open. There was so much space through the middle of the pitch, and in the end it was a very comfortable day at the office. No surprise Watford have added defenders after that. But Middlesbrough absolutely flying, look brilliant at home at the minute. They're up to third in the league. They are the best of the rest at the minute. And from where Michael Carrick took over, it's an incredible job well done. For Blackpool, a very spirited effort in Mick McCarthy's first game. A 2-1 defeat away at Premier League Southampton in the Cup. And again, big defensive additions. Charlie Good comes in. Curtis Nelson from Mick McCarthy's former club Cardiff too. There was no doubt he was going to add that at the back, and he has done it very quickly. Middlesbrough themselves have upgraded in 2 positions, and Cameron Archer adds yet more attacking depth. But at the moment, as much as I think Mick McCarthy's Blackpool will do well this season and will have a chance of staying up now, Middlesbrough are unstoppable at the minute. I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to nick it. Again, maybe closer than a lot of people would predict, but I'm going to go for Middlesbrough 2, Blackpool 0. On to what I think might be one of the games of the weekend in the Championship this week as Millwall host Sunderland at the Den. Millwall got a crucial 1-0 win away at Cardiff, a game in which there were plenty of chances for both sides, but they did edge it in the end. And after 2 defeats against top Championship sides, one in the league and one in a cup, it was crucial for them to get back to winning ways. Having said that, in the other games, if you take out the Middlesbrough 1-0 defeat, that's the only goal they've conceded in the last 5 matches in the Championship. So Millwall starting to look like them old selves. They're only in 8th place. They're 1 point off the playoffs. They have got a real chance of pushing on into that top 6. Sunderland, just unlucky, aren't they? I mean, Ross Stewart, come back from injury, looked good again, and now he's out for what seemingly will be most of the rest of the season. Big pressure on Joe Gelhardt, who'd probably come in to provide competition. Now he's going to be the star man up there. Can he deliver? He's a slightly different type of striker. Will they be able to play well on the counter? I actually think it will suit them better away from home. We've seen the pace, we've seen the quality they've got on the break. Amad Diallo looking a brilliant player again against Fulham in the FA Cup. That replay going to be an exciting one in midweek for them. But Millwall at home, they're so good. 3rd best record in the division, only the top 2 have got a better one. 2 defeats, only 8 goals conceded. I mean, it's going to be tough work for Sunderland. If anyone can, it's probably them. They're one of the best away teams in the division. I'm going to go for them to nick a goal. but Millwall for me will win this. Again, Millwall never win by 3, 4 or 5. I'm going to go Millwall 2, Sunderland 1. Next up is Preston North End versus Bristol City, and the visitors in this one are actually in pretty good form. A really good FA Cup win against West Brom, unbeaten in 5 games before that as well, albeit 2 of them are cup ties and a lot of them were 1-1 draws. Preston on the other hand, big defeat against Spurs, but a crucial win against Preston in the league prior to that. If you take out the Norwich game where they were hit by the new manager bounce, they've actually been in decent form in 2023 so far. They're going to be reliant on the addition of Josh Onoma for that little bit of creative spark in midfield. Whereas Bristol City say goodbye to Antoine Semenyo and Chris Martin. And hello to Mehmeti and Cornick, the new strike partnership, who I'm sure will get lots of game time between now and the end of the year. They're continuing their policy of going to Luton and trebling the wage of their players. But for now, it's a good addition. It'll probably suit them on the road. And Preston, we know, at times can struggle for goals. But 2 teams that have been very hard to predict. Neither of them have been consistent in their form. Both of them look all right at the moment, but I have no idea what to do here. I'm going to go on the policy that Preston have been awful at home this year. They've only won 3 games out of 14. They're actually in the relegation zone based purely on their home form. Bristol City haven't been much better on the road. They've only won 3 games. Do you know what? All the attacking additions we've talked about, I'm going to go for 0-0. Next up is a game where I think we're going to see some new defenders on show. It's Reading versus Watford. Reading, of course, lost to Man United in the FA Cup. The less said about Andy Carroll's performance, the better. I don't know what he was doing. He was either too fired up, just plain stupid, but one of those really bizarre moments in his career where he probably should have been sent off twice over for the accumulation of yellow cards. The referee was lenient with him and he still got himself sent off. He will be a big miss for them. Stoke City battered them the week before in the league. There's no winning 3 in all competitions. Watford, in fairness, have had to add reinforcements. Slaven Bilic needed strength in depth in defence, and of course they've had a lot of injuries too. They kept hold of Ismail Assar despite reported interest from Everton, and Wesley Hurt and Ryan Porteous will have real quality in defence. Britta Sombalonga, of course, a little bit of a gamble, but it is good to see him back at the club. He's a good championship striker at his best. And this one for me is tough because Reading at home this year are a brilliant side, but when they don't score the first goal, they're normally in big trouble. Watford away from home, well, they've been all right, but again, it's hit and miss. They lost at Borough. They lost at Reading just a few weeks ago in the FA Cup in the same fixture. And they lost 4-0 at Swansea and capitulated over the festive break. Then they got a great 1-0 win at Norwich. How do you predict these sides? I think Watford will do well and get in the playoffs eventually. Those defensive additions, they're Bilic-type centre-halves, which is what they needed. For Reading, they've got to try and get the result. I'm going to go for them to draw this game. And I know I've gone for a lot of draws in this fixture list, but Reading will get the first goal. They'll be defensively solid, but then Watford will find an equaliser. Reading 1, Watford 1. I better start predicting some teams to win now, hadn't I? The penultimate game does not look good for that either, though, because it is Swansea City versus Birmingham City. Birmingham are massively on the slide. It has not been a good few months for them. They started the season well. They were performing above expectations. Now just 6 points clear of that drop zone and falling very quickly. Not won a game in the league for some time. Obviously got that win at Forest Green in the 3rd round of the Cup. Lost on Tuesday night in the 4th round replay against Blackburn. For Swansea, again a very similar story. Brilliant 4-0 win against Watford. Very good 3-1 win against Sunderland. But they're the only 2 wins they've had since the World Cup. So Swansea not the most consistent either. They're doing what they normally do in mid-table. Obviously missed out late on Carlin Grant, which I think they were reliant on after losing Obafemi earlier in the window. So it's going to be a tricky spell for them. Not as much firepower, and generally putting the ball in the back of the net hasn't been a problem for them overall, but taking the amount of chances they create has been. In terms of Birmingham, I mean, I think they're in freefall. And that early season prediction, we got a lot of stick for it, putting them in a relegation zone, and people came back after 10 games saying, well, look who's laughing now, we're going to be comfortable. And it doesn't look that way at the minute. Maybe some good additions in January, but I wouldn't say standout ones. I think Swansea nick it. If I'm being honest, I think Birmingham will set up resolute. They'll try and defend themselves on the road. They have generally been involved in those types of games. And if you look at these sides this season, there's been a lot of draws, a lot of games won by 1 goal either way. So I'm going to go for Swansea to nick it. I'm going to go 2-1 to the home side. And finally, on Monday night, we have Blackburn Rovers versus Wigan Athletic, a Lancashire derby. We talked about this fixture a little bit in the Wigan Manager special. Yes, another one up in the eye above. Sean Maloney replaced Kolo Touré after just 9 games in charge, and you can see they've been very quick in the loan market at the end of this window. If you look at deadline day, you've got the likes of Martin Kelly, Omar Rekik really bolstering that defence, Daniel Sinani adding a bit of attacking guile, but still no striker, which I found really surprising. Maybe they're looking at the creation or playing 2 sort of attacking, quicker wingers up front, but that's going to be something that's going to be crucial to their end of the season chances. They are still bottom of the league, but well within touching distance. And we talked about that omen, didn't we? The fact that the last time Wigan won and kept a clean sheet was in early October against Blackburn Rovers, and boy do Wigan need a clean sheet. Their early season away form was great. Under Kolo Touré, their defensive record just collapsed, unfortunately. And although 3 of their last 4 games were against Luton, it's a bit hard to judge. A new manager bounce has been largely very efficient this season in the Championship. Blackburn have been good at home. They haven't drawn a home game, of course. Their record was spoilt against Bristol City last time out in a Championship. But a Tuesday night win in the FA Cup replay against Birmingham, that went to extra time. Is it potentially going to be something that's important come the weekend? I'm not so sure. Wigan have got to be more solid defensively. I think we'll see a very different setup for them. But ultimately, although they're inconsistent, although it's a risky game, I still think Blackburn Rovers win it. They have been generally good at home. All of their last 3 wins have been by 1-0 to 0. So that's what I'm going to go for here. Blackburn 1, Wigan 0, and a very different Wigan performance. Let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted for this weekend's full fixture list. And we start on Friday night with a West Bromwich Albion win. And then it's draws galore from my point of view. Loads of games where it's very hard to separate the 2 teams, including the one I'll be at, which is Luton Town v Stoke. And the one featuring the leaders with the new manager bounce of Norwich, trying to replicate their away performances at home at Carrow Road. Monday night, we're going for the Lancashire derby. Wigan will not have the dream start under Sean Maloney, but they're just my predictions. What about you? Let me know down in the comments what you think will happen this weekend. Of course, if you outdo my score, you will get a mention at the start of the next prediction show. If you did enjoy the episode, please do put a thumbs up on it. Let me know how bad you think my predictions are. And if you want to stay up to date with regular content from the Honest Football Podcast, subscribe and turn that notification bell on. You can support the show as a channel member by clicking the join button down below. But enjoy the weekend of Championship football, and I'll see you back here on Sunday for more predictions.